So Dana has come out and said he needs to see how two different weekends play out as it pertains to what's going to happen with Conor. He said he needs to see how Diaz Pettis goes, and he said, of course, Khabib and Poirier. Now that's interesting for a couple of reasons, isn't it? One of the things that I like about the Diaz Pettis fight that has not been discussed by anybody else is the Pettis factor, because listen, Conor has also been out for a very long time. A lot of people are saying Nate Diaz has been out. He's been out 3 years. Well, he's kind of been out as long as Conor's been out. Well, no. Conor went and boxed Floyd. Well, I get that, but Diaz went into grappling competition. So, I mean, if you're just looking for any kind of competition, it's a wash. And I'm well aware of the Conor Khabib fight in Nate, but that's still one fight. It's one MMA fight. They're very similar trajectories and very similar paths. They've also split in competition. So we understand that those two are very close. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. And we shouldn't have any reason to believe that too much has changed from the last outings because they've both kind of been away for the same amount of time. Broad stroke, but fair. Well, the reason I like the Pettis angle is because there has also been talk of Pettis versus Conor, and it just seems to me that a Pettis versus Diaz, even though MMA math of A equals B and B equals C, but A doesn't equal C, I understand that, but I still think it's a good solid starting point, a good solid talking point, jumping off for how would Pettis do against Conor. I think that it is a very interesting side to that. So Dana says he's looking at, okay, fine. I'm sure more he's looking at how's Diaz going to do, and are we going to do Diaz-Conor 3? I will concede that's likely what Dana meant by saying that. But I think there is another side to the Pettis. Now, as you steer over to Poirier and Khabib, there's no big surprise there, right? And if it's going to be Poirier, I don't know if those guys are going to rematch. They probably would. If there was a belt on the line, likely Conor would come back. But I think that what Dana's talking about is how is Diaz going to do? How's Khabib going to do? And which fight can I put together? If I was to choose between seeing Conor versus Khabib or seeing Conor versus Diaz, I'm going to go with Diaz. And the reason is I don't know who's going to win that fight. I've seen it both ways. And on the third one, I can go into this as a fantasy. Man, I don't know what in the hell is going to happen here. One of these guys got stopped, and this guy won. Then it went the distance, and this guy won. With Khabib versus Conor, the only way that would be compelling for me to believe we could have a different result is if Conor was active. If Conor was active and out there and busy, and we were seeing him working on some of those techniques and positions and then implementing them in competition and saying, okay, he learned and he's grown, and therefore we need to rematch them. That would be a bigger sell for me. Now, I do want to see Conor and Khabib fight. That is true, and that isn't what I'm saying. But if I was to choose between those two, with Conor's absence, now you slipped Conor in there one or two times, but it's too late now. He didn't do it. He sat out. Had he slipped in there one or two times, don't forget, I mean, this is very common. We just saw this within the last 2 years, and it was called Rumble Johnson versus Daniel Cormier Part 2. Rumble lost to Daniel Cormier, but then he stayed busy, and he started putting people down. He started putting people out. Those guys, Gustafsson comes to mind, goes out there, has a match with DC. It's super close. Rumble shut Gus off in the first round. Okay, Rumble learned from those mistakes. He's gotten better. Let's go see it again. Even though the result didn't change, leading into it, it's about anticipation. It's about creating a decision in your mind of, boy, anything could happen here. I'm not sure that we could levelly, while being honest with ourselves, believe that we're going to get a different result from one guy who's active and competing versus another guy who's not.